I think I'm very fortunate that my earlier speakers have left me with nothing to speak on. They have covered every aspect of it that I thought that I would cover. However, having sat here, let me think of something, which is away from my presentation, because there's no point in, repeating whatever the earlier speakers have said, and that becomes a true overhead. So let me try and slice that overhead and take you to the narrow focus of a finance cost, which is an important cost on every balance sheet. And I think not too many of the top management spend as much time to look at what more can they extract out of it. As the earlier speakers have said, I think it's a very, very competitive world. I think, the value in the material, embedded in the material, the value embedded in a labor cost is all today calculated by a customer. It's the other overheads that need to be looked at. And in that overhead, I'm looking at the finance cost. What is a finance cost? A finance cost ultimately is the money that we are borrowing and for which we end up paying in the system. You could borrow prudently, and if you were prudent, it would mean that you have looked at your cash flows in a very systematic manner to determine what are the gaps that are going to come over a period of time, which is what you would then endeavor to tweak and say that, in my lean period, I need X amount of money. In my peak period, I need X into something amount of money. And am I spending enough time to manage that resource in a competitively priced manner? So I'll touch upon a couple of very basic things and then leave you with thoughts on certain specifics. So the basic thing is always a balance sheet management. How does your balance sheet look like? Because when you go to a lender or when you go to a market that is giving you an equity, they want to see you through your balance sheet as the first starting point. Is somebody really interested in giving me money? Which means that there are a couple of things that we all have to understand. One of the big things that lead to a downfall of a company or to its prosperity is essentially managing the leverage in the system. A leverage is how much capital have you put, against that how much have you borrowed. If your borrowing to your capital is less, you can demand a much finer pricing from whoever the lender is. Similarly, if you are providing enough security on your working capital, which means that you are providing a current asset which is far more or which is more than your liability, the lender is more comfortable and he feels that the risk of lending to you is lower. So the emphasis for anybody who's looking at a finance function is to really see how does he reduce the risks that are embedded in the balance sheet. A margin is something that we also must look at, which is the earning, the cash that the business is generating, and the ability of that cash to service the raisings and the cost of those raisings. If there is adequate protection for the lender, your cost of borrowing comes down. So this is the broad parameter on which one has to look at the financing cost and how you will manage that financing cost to raise it in an efficient manner. There are instruments that are available today. There are instruments that have risks embedded in them. So I've seen people who come back and say that, you are borrowing against your equipment, I'll get you money at 4%. You look at the market and you see that the market lends at 11%. So without really understanding where the trap is, one gets into it. So those are the risks that are embedded in the system. Maybe what you see apparently is a 7% saving, but when you end the transaction, you're not saving 7%, you have actually spent 4% over whatever you could have borrowed at, because you have not done a due diligence on a transaction. We have seen in the years 2008, 2008 is a huge benchmark year, 2007-8 for India and the industry, because we heard horror stories of derivatives and how derivatives actually exploded balance sheets, ruined businesses. These were instruments that were sold as a huge cost saving exercise. So people went into it without realizing the inherent risk in an instrument that was sold. So as a finance function, I think it is very important to see what are the instruments that you are handling, that you are embedding in your business. A garment business, and if it is the fashion end of the business, is by nature a risk that is already embedded in your balance sheet. Do you add more risk to it? So the sustainability of the business and the instruments that you will pick up are two things that are exceedingly important when we come to any judgments. There are a couple of things that we do at Orient Craft. We try and keep our costs under control. So while raw material is looked at very carefully, the labor is looked at very prudently, overheads are seen. As a finance function, we also measure what is the unit cost of interest that I am embedding into the product, and is my product capable of really handling that. So we will structure our balance sheet and we'll structure our needs either to expand or not to expand, depending on what resources are available, what my product can really carry with it to service the entire business and the future of the business. A couple of things that I can share with you which I think come in very handy. In today's markets, we can certainly look at factoring your export goods. There is an appetite from people who are willing to look at buying your receivable on day one. So most of our receivables actually come with a credit period. This credit period adds a risk. We have seen that there are a lot of there are some companies which have gone belly up. So they were very good at one point in time. We have sold goods to them and we think that after 60 days this money will pay for it, will come back. But what if it does not come back? So we try and eliminate as much of our risk as we can as we go by. So our emphasis today is to clear our receivables as early as possible. Don't carry it for the entire duration if you can avoid doing that. And this is an instrument that is available if you scout around. There are banks that are willing to do that, and it comes at a very, very effective cost. It's not that something that you are really paying a premium on it, but when you look at the overall thing that happens with it, your balance sheet is lighter because it's not carrying on the one side a receivable and on the other side a loan which is in the shape of a discounting. So the net balance sheet size is lower, and when you measure it against the P&L, so you have a smaller balance sheet carrying a P&L which is optically looking better. The ratios turn positive. So this is something that I can advocate for people in this room who can look at this instrument. The other thing is, how do I match my payable to a receivable? If I can match my payable to my receivable, the quantum of money that I need to borrow in the system is lower. So if my need is 100, and if I can actually compress it to 20, then I'm servicing that 20. I'm not servicing that 100. And therefore, as the gentleman rightly mentioned, a penny saved is a penny earned. So whatever savings you can do by thinking out of the box is something that one should look at. In our sector, looking at the interest costs and the embedded finance costs is not really taken very seriously. I've seen people walking up to me at times, a lot of overseas discounters come to me and say that, we'll pay you 30 days in advance. We'll take a percentage as discount. What does it mean? It means that I'm paying a 12% annualized cost. 1% a month is a 12% annualized cost. And I'm paying it in dollars. Because that's what he's doing. He's shaving off my dollar and he's giving me that. A 12% annualized cost in today's term is 11.7% spread over LIBOR. You can go to any Indian bank here, and if you have to borrow LIBOR, you can borrow at 3%. If you do not want to exercise any skills, you can borrow 3% over LIBOR. But merely by not looking at and analyzing that transaction, you have ended up paying 8% annualized higher, which is what is going to hurt your balance sheet, which is what is going to hurt your P&L. So things that look so simple and apparent are not so simple and apparent. So I would request people to look at these simple looking costs with microscope, and you'll see that there are a lot of savings that you can draw from doing these simple things. In our business, I think it's important that we can use buyer's credit or a supplier's credit, whether it is on the equipment side, whether it is on the raw material side. Fortunately today the world market is flush with money, with cash. And money is available on very, very easy terms. So just to give you a number, you can raise a buyer's credit at maybe 40 basis points over LIBOR, which means it is 0.7% annualized. The currency risk is there. So even if you want to cover your currency risk, it comes at about 6.5%. So what does it mean? It means that you have the ability to borrow at a little over 7%. And if your borrowing cost today on a good balance sheet is a 10%, 10.5%, you are still managing to shave off maybe 300 basis points. And 300 basis points is a lot of money. As our friend here has mentioned, that a 10 days delay on 100 crores is 35 lakhs. So if you aggregate all these things, what you will see is that there is a lot of potential for work on balance sheets, on P&L, on instruments, that we can all work together and probably, as a combined entity, and maybe using, the people like Sanjay, who have the bulk with which they can, negotiate with banks for us. I think if we all got together, we would be able to make our business more attractive, more long-lasting. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for a lovely talk on how to raise money. I have a couple of questions with you just to understand in detail. When we talk of factoring, the problem what we have faced earlier, that mostly the factoring companies talk of doing factoring only if they have a tie-up with a given buyer. That's our experience. So all of the buyers may not be interested in talking to an HSBC or a Barclays or anybody to do a discount bill through them. So how do you manage that? How are there companies which do factoring without going to your customers? They pay you money without going to them?
Sanjay, there are two things that, there is a factoring which is a real factoring, and there is using the customer's line for discounting, which is what typically you are talking about. I'm not talking of using the customer's line. Okay. If you can do that, that's ideal. Because what it means is that an HSBC has a customer who has placed orders on you. HSBC has a line of credit, and you are marking it against that line of credit. Now, unfortunately, as companies in India, we are minuscule in size. We do not have the ability to flex muscles. We are not some of those very large Chinese companies which can come and say to a bank and to show that, they have a lot of volume, and therefore the bank gets interested in following your path also. There are insurers globally. These insurers are like ECGC, in our common parlance. We go to an ECGC to cover our risk. These insurers cover the risk, and the bank takes the umbrage of that insurance cover to lend you money. So the essence of the transaction is that there is a company globally which looks at the insurance risk. The bank ties up for your customer against that insurance risk, and against that insurance risk, when you deliver your documents today to the bank buys it off you, because the credit risk is already covered by that insurance company. So this is how the system works.
Coming to the LIBOR lending mechanism, the main problem people have faced in the past is this risk of hedging. Now, how successfully you have been able to hedge it in the currency markets? You said it's a 6.5% cost. Is that cost a constant cost, or does it vary depending upon how the currency markets are behaving?
Yes, the hedging costs vary. The hedging costs are virtually at its peak today. What is a hedging cost? In essence, the hedging cost is essentially the difference of in a true market. It's the difference between the inflation rate in country A and inflation rate in country B. So this is what is supposedly the hedging cost. Now what happens is that this is distorted by the flows. So you may require $100, but there are inward flows of 120, and therefore your hedging cost becomes lower, or vice versa. So yes, hedging costs float, but hedging costs do not float so rapidly. I have seen hedging costs as little as less than 1%, and I've seen hedging costs of 7.5%. So that's the band that I have seen. And these costs have gone up so significantly post the financial crisis of 2008. Earlier, it used to be 3-4% only, but they have gone up. But if you factor in the hedging cost today, a 6-month LIBOR, on a 6-month hedging cost is close to about 6.65, 6.7%. Now let's say that I were to get 2% over LIBOR as my cost. Why do I need to hedge? I need to hedge because I don't want to speculate. That's not my business. My business here is to control and cut my cost. So I don't want that a big event happens somewhere and it drives my costs haywire because of that event risk that nobody could have foreseen. So what will I do? I'll add to my LIBOR, which is currently about 0.3%, to let's say a spread of 2%, 2.5%. So I come to 2.8, and I add my hedging cost of 6.7%. So where am I? I'm at 9.5% on a fully secured known cost. There is no devil in it anymore. And if I'm matching against an 11%, what have I done? I have actually saved 1.5%. And 1.5% today is probably 15% of your finance cost. If your finance cost comes at 10% and you have saved 1.5%, you have lowered your cost by 15%. So that 1% or 1.5% looks very small and measly, but when you look at it in perspective, it can be fairly large. On a buyer's credit, if you add a 0.4 to a 0.3 and you add the hedging cost, you're at 7.2 against maybe a 10.5, which is a very significant amount, because then you are saving 35%, 40% of your cost.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You said that balance sheet management is very pivotal for the financial life cycle for any given company, at any given point in time. And it is widely understood and known that balance sheet management is both art and science. It's like bikini, which suggests more, reveals less.
I completely disagree with that. A balance sheet is a statement of fact. You distort the fact, you lose your credibility. I don't think that there is anybody who can go around saying that he's so smart that he'll never get caught. When you lose your credibility, you lose all. So I don't think there is anything which is that you can play around. 1 plus 1, as a chartered accountant, I will always say it's a 2. I'll not say it can be 1.9 or 2.1. So when we make our balance sheet, as we will all agree here on this forum, you want to fudge anything, we have seen great fudgers. Do you want to take that risk? The risk is not only on the person, the risk is on the business, on the longevity of that business. You want to do that. To save 1%, It's a trade-off. Each person to himself. He knows what's best for him. But to say that, it's an art and a science, I completely disagree.
Thanks for the clarity.
Other inputs, questions? Any thoughts on here? So in your experience, what do you have found better? It would be factoring or the laboratory? Which is simpler and which is better?
See, I would definitely look at a factoring, because what is it doing? It's actually eliminating a risk of a receivable.
And also it's not bringing it to your balance sheet.
It's not bringing it to my balance sheet, it gives me a better, structure on my balance sheet. Optically, I've improved my leverage, I've reduced the risk, and therefore I'm all for, factoring as much as I can.
So I guess we can conclude this session. If nobody has further questions, I think there is a sum-up session in the Gulmohar Hall. We'll go slowly so we can all go there and sum it up for the day. Am I right?